Welcome to all learners. In the previous session, we have discussed the different techniques of assessment and evaluation. Again, I am inviting all of you to the part second of the same topic, that is techniques of assessment and evaluation. Let us see what are the various assessment techniques. When we look at the various assessment techniques, we can classify it as concept test, self-report techniques, observation techniques, peer assessment, assignments, sociometric technique, portfolios. In the last session, we have seen the different types of assessment techniques. Let me continue our discussion on the later assessment techniques of assessment as well as evaluation techniques. In the first, we are going to discuss about peer assessment. When we think of these peers, we know that it's a group consisting of homogeneous learners, and it refers to one student or a group of students assessing other students. So what is happening is that it helps to develop interpersonal skills, and it develops an impartial attitude, improve listening skills. So this is very important in this 21st century assessment. What is important is that more than the teacher's assessment, now we are giving emphasis upon peer assessment as well as self-assessment. Let me see what are the benefits of peer assessment. When we look at the benefits, the first benefit is install autonomy in learners. Nowadays, we are giving emphasis upon the learner autonomy or the student autonomy. So what is happening is that when the peers come forward for assessment, they took responsibility for their own feedback and they try to develop their activities, their reports, all their assessment activities they will try to improve. Secondly, we can see it empower the learner, because the learner is the center of such type of assessment. Coming to the third point, we can see that it develops learner confidence in assessing peers. So when the peers are assessing their own friend, they develop some kind of self-confidence. Next point, it develops learner ability to self-evaluate and reflect. You know that when the learners try to assess their friends, these should not be succumbed to this prejudiced assessment. What is important is that self-evaluation and reflection. And you know that in the 21st century, we are giving importance for this self-reflection. And next we can see that there will be greater understanding about assessment. Earlier, students are just getting the feedback or the marks. They should be satisfied with that. There should not be any voice of the learners in the process of assessment. So what is happening in peer assessment is that we can see the voice of the learners. And coming to the next point, there is interactive classes for feedback. So always the feedback is going on in an interactive way. Next point, it improves information and understand clear and open marking systems. And we can see that the learners will understand their own assessment feedback. And then we can see the next point, seeing standards set by peers. When the peers are telling, there is a general tendency to listen carefully. Coming to the next point, we can see there is the ability to assess without any bias. And we may not think that as they are friends, they may not be giving the good feedback. It's wrong. There should not be any bias. They are giving the proper assessment. And coming to the last point, we can see that there is rapid way for a tutor to assess a large number of student work. Now we know that we are giving emphasis for MOOC courses. So how do we assess? Whether the teacher alone can assess? a huge number of students? No, not at all. So when we give option for peer assessment, there we can see the relevance of peer assessment. Next technique what we are going to discuss is sociometric technique. So from the term itself you can know that some kind of social relationship will be there in this technique. It gives an objective picture of social relationships in a classroom. And this sociometric technique, it was developed by Jacob Louis Moreno, and it is originated from the Latin word socius meaning companion and metrum meaning measure. So this sociometric technique, it is usually used by teachers in every classroom. When you think of your pre-service training, you can see that we are using this technique generally in classroom. When we come to this preparation, the procedure of a sociogram, here we will develop different kinds of questions. What are the questions that we are developing? The questions that ask to the group. What are the questions? Let me see what are the questions coming. Firstly, we will ask, who are your 3 best friends in your class? Secondly, which 3 friends in the class would you like to work within a small group in your class? Thirdly, which 3 friends would you like to sit with at lunchtime? And lastly, which 3 friends would you like to go with for a picnic? So when you look at these questions, you can see that it's a type of positive questions where the learners are going to select their friends according to their preferences. When we look at these questions, we can see that these questions can be called as fixed positive nomination technique. Why is it known as fixed positive nomination techniques? It's because the choices are restricted to 3 friends. That's why the term fixed is coming. Why the positive is coming is that you can see that they are allowed to take their own friends according to their acceptance or choices. And from this technique, what we can see is that we can find the interpersonal acceptance among students. What type of acceptance is coming among the learners? When coming to this interpersonal acceptance, equally in this technique we can see the relevance of interpersonal rejection. And when we come to the point of interpersonal rejection, there we are asking 3 questions like, which 3 friends do you like the least? Next, which 3 friends you don't like to include in your group work? Next, which 3 friends you don't like to go with for a picnic? So here some negative questions are coming. Here we can see that what type of questions, we can see that interpersonal rejection is coming. And why this interpersonal rejection is needed? When we think of the study of rejection, what the teacher is getting? The teacher will get an idea about the unfavorable emotional reaction of students. Sometimes the students may reject some friends. Why? What is the reason? The teacher is able to understand why the interpersonal rejection is existing among the learners in classroom. And next technique what we are going to discuss is sociogram. When we look at sociogram, we can see that it can be defined as the graphical representation of relationships between a specific group. And it is also a chart to know the interrelationships within the group. And it helps teacher to build a supportive learning environment. So from this sociometric technique, this graphical representation of this sociometric will be known as sociogram. And when we come to this sociometric technique, it is useful to assess social behavior, relatedness and interpersonal trust that exist within the group. And it also studies the social patterns in the group. There are different types of social patterns that is arising in a classroom. As classroom is a microsystem of the society. You can see there are different students with diverse backgrounds, languages, races, religions. So this type of cultural diversities, we can see different types of social patterns among the group. And the next one what we can see is that it helps to know interpersonal acceptance, rejection among students. Based on that, the teacher can give counseling upon the emotional reactions of learners. And next technique what we are going to discuss is portfolios. When we look at portfolios, we will define portfolio as a systematically organized collection of a student's work that covers a specific period of time. Hence, we may call it as a blend of instructional process and the evaluation process. So, how portfolio becomes an instructional process? You may be wondering that it is really an instructional process for the learners. The learners will study about the different types of their collections of works, how to do the work. From the feedback, they will remodify the work. So from that we can see that it's a kind of instructional process and it's a kind of evaluation process for the teachers. The teachers may be evaluating the portfolios of learners. Then what are the items that included in a portfolio? When we look at the portfolio, it's a collection of varieties of items such as completed assignments, journal writings, reflections on discussions, photos, sketches and other visuals, summary statements and self-assessment statements. All these things are the items that comes in a portfolio. And when we look at the portfolio, we can see that the portfolio can be, there may be of different types of portfolio and it can be classified as process portfolio and product portfolio. When we look at this process portfolio, it includes during the time of preparation of any item. So how the learners are coming towards the end product, what are the activities they have taken. So this comes under the process portfolio. Suppose the learners are engaged in the preparation of a project. So what they have to do? They have to select the topic, they have to frame a hypothesis and they have to frame the data collection tool from where they will be collecting. So all those things will be included in the process portfolio. And in the product portfolio, what will come? The project report will come. So there we will assess based on different criteria. So here we can see that these two types of portfolio will speak the efforts of the learners' hard work. What type of work they have taken place in the classroom. And when we look at this portfolio, we can see that portfolio supports student learning. How portfolio support student learning? That may be arising in your mind. When we look at this point, we can see that students' participation in the selection of contents, students' written reflection about learning, students' communication with the teachers regarding their reflection. So all these things are coming under the student learning. So they may be learning about the selection of the contents, they may be learning about their own reflection, about their own learning. So we can say that some kind of metacognition is coming, that they are thinking about their own thinking process, and then students' communication with the teachers regarding their reflection. And next technique that normally what we used in classroom, that is project work. When we think of project work, we can see that it's a work that makes the learners to think beyond classroom limits and develop skills, behaviors, inquisitiveness and confidence. And when we think of this project work, it is not like an assignment. It develops higher order thinking. So what is needed is that it assesses the skills of collaboration, problem solving, decision making and communication. So here through the project work, we can see that the collaborative capacity of the learners will be improving. And we know that instead of one brain, more brain are always better. So through this project work, that principle can be adopted. And next we can see it's a kind of problem solving technique. How to solve a problem in a group manner, and then what type of decision should be taken, and the communication between the learners is going on. Next, how do we assess a project work? It's very important. Doing a project alone is not enough. How do we assess? When we assess a project work, we used rubrics. So, what is a rubric? It is used as an assessment tool. In project work, how do we use rubric? When we think of rubric, there comes different questions in the mind of the teachers. Did your rubric contain criteria related with the learner's engagement in a real world task? Secondly, did your rubric have criteria to assess group work? Thirdly, did your rubric assess students' use of higher order thinking? Lastly, did your rubric evaluate the students' progress throughout the task? So these are some of the criteria that is in question form that comes under the rubric. By using this rubric, it's possible to assess the project work in a judicious manner. This is about the assessment of project work. Then comes the next criteria, the next technique, that is debate. When we think of debate, it is a kind of dialogue about a significant topic, and it promotes independent thinking. It develops skills such as listening, rapid response, speaking and debating the issues in a professional manner. Generally, teachers are using this type of technique in classroom. And how do we evaluate debate? Generally, what is happening is that the debating process will go on without any evaluation. For evaluating a rubric, what is needed is a rating scale. And the rating scale should consist items related with relevance of the content, presentation style, clarity of the argument, logical approach, quality of the rebuttal. This item should be there. And then we can see that all the above techniques, we are referring about the individual technique. Sometimes project will be done as a group work, but assessment of group processes, it includes two techniques, that is cooperative learning, seminar and seminar report. When we think of this cooperative learning, we know that there is a cooperation among the learners. So they are working together. There is sharing of ideas, respect of ideas, free expression of ideas and listening skills. So these type of skills are able to promote through this cooperative learning. When we come to seminar, we can see that it helps to understand a concept in a detailed manner. It develops critical thinking and reasoning, and it develops the ability to build new knowledge. It develops self-confidence and self-discipline. How to perform in a seminar? Through that, the learners will develop self-discipline and self-confidence, and the presentation style, how to present in front of a large audience. All these things are learning through a seminar. Next, when we look at this seminar report, we can see that there is clarity of presentation, then whether there is accuracy of report writing, next how the report was organized, an analysis of teamwork and generation of new ideas. All these things are important when a teacher wants to assess a seminar report. So all these things are coming under the criteria. So let me brief what we have learned today. We have learned about the process of technique, the techniques of assessment and evaluation. When we think of these techniques of assessment and evaluation, we can see that we discussed about, firstly, in the earlier session we have discussed variety of techniques, and now we have discussed about the project work, then the seminar which we assess for the group processes. And when we look at the individual assessment, we have taken that different types of techniques such as the focus group discussion already we have discussed in the earlier session, and then in this session we have seen the rest of the techniques such as the different things, the debate, how do we conduct the debate in a classroom. And we may think that assignments, it's also an individual technique. There we are giving assignments to the students so that they can elaborate their presentation of ideas in a proper way. And through these assignments, they have the scope for critical thinking, their generation of ideas, their writing capacity, everything we can see in this assignment technique. And when we look at these different types of techniques of assessment and evaluation, the most important thing is that the portfolio, it is coming up in the 21st century. So through this portfolio, the learners are able to assess their own activity, as well as it is useful for the teachers as well as the students. And through the portfolio, we can see that it can be used as an instructional process and as an evaluation process. And for assessing anything, there comes the importance of this rubric. What this rubrics? The rubrics is the modern assessment tool which contains the criteria. So when we think of rubrics also, we can see there are two types of rubrics, holistic rubrics and analytical rubric. And for this holistic rubric, it is assessing the holistic development of the learner, and in the analytical rubric, we can see different criteria will be given, and based on the criteria, the assessment will take place. And in such type of rubrics, we know that the learner will come to know in what way they have to perform their activity. That is important in rubric. So learners, hope that you might have understood the latest techniques of assessment and evaluation. Let you have a clear clarity and let you practice these assessment techniques in your classroom.